Hello all you cats and kittens out there, it's your boy DW. That's right, some of you might know me as DarkWolf, some of you might know me as Edward Bosco, but whatever you call me, you should know that I play Lieutenant Garand and a whole bunch of extras in Eve of October. Which begs the question, why am I being interviewed? Whatever, let's roll with it. What's the next question? Well, there's actually an interesting story behind this question, mainly because I wasn't supposed to be in this. Let me explain. Originally, I had auditioned for a whole bunch of roles, the T'Pol Diplomat, I think there were a whole bunch of extras that were up, Governor Salvo, Gunter was up for audition, so it was whatever round of auditions that was, that's when I originally started auditioning for stuff. But as it would turn out, once I sent all my auditions in, Mars emails me back and he goes, "Oh, I just finished casting, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry." Long story short, he winds up rewriting parts of the script to throw me a bone and give me a couple extra roles, and then also the lieutenant that I eventually wound up playing. See what I did there? Throw me a bone? Because my name's DarkWolf. Anyway, Mars, big props to you, man. I really do appreciate that. So that's kind of how I stumbled into Eve of October, and it was a ton of fun, so I'm glad I was able to sneak in somehow. I am from the greatest city in the world, Chicago, Illinois. So big time shout out to Laura Post, Chicago voice actors holding it down. That's how we do it in the Windy City. But yeah, I love this city, and I try to represent it well with everything that I do. But as far as my background goes, it's a lot of sports. Growing up, I was a jock. I played a lot of sports, mainly basketball. Grew up in a family of sports fans, so I took to basketball first. Bulls games, Bears games, Cubs game, White Sox, Blackhawks. It just kind of spiraled out of control the older I got really into it. You know, I bought all the video games, I knew all the players, I went out and bought the paraphernalia, and because, you know, it's a pride thing. It's part of the city of Chicago, and they go out and they rep our city and give us bragging rights, and, you know, I want to support them. So it's a lot of fun. How that ties into voiceover? I don't know. It really doesn't. Your guess is as good as mine. What inspires me to walk the path of my talent? Who are you, James Lipton on Inside the Actors Studio? It's a pretty profound question. Let's see. I guess if you're asking me why do I do voiceover, it's mainly because it's a lot of fun. There's really no complicated answer. I wish I had a more in-depth story that I could tell you, such as when I was a little kid, I used to do voices in front of the television and blah-de-blah-de-blah. Because you've heard that story before, that's a lot of people's story, it's just not mine. But the main reason that I do what I do is because it's a lot of fun. And it really is as simple as that. I take it very seriously, I study it very hard, I invest in my career, and I'm very dedicated to it. I live it and I breathe it every single day. It's very important to me. There's two moments that really stand out to me. And I know I'm probably only supposed to pick one, but I'm going to do two. Deal with it. Number one, the scene with the Cardinal it was just, in my opinion, a really solid scene. And the main reason why is I think it's the performance that David Dixon, Shock Dingo, turned in as that Cardinal. It was absolutely brilliant. I remember talking to my buddy Mac about it, and we were both blown away by how compelling it was. We legitimately hated that character in that scene, and that's awesome when you're able to inspire that kind of an emotional response to anything. I give major props to him on that scene and making me hate his guts. Well done, David. Number two would be, and this is going to be a weird one for most people, but it's the scene where the sniper's up on the roof and he shoots Jake. And it's mainly because of an inside joke, which I won't get into, but I jumped up, I cheered, and then when I wound up playing that sniper as an extra later on, oh, benissimo. That's all I can say. If I had to pick a character that I identify with the most, it would probably be that Cardinal. Mainly because I think we have a lot in common. I mean, he's a jerk, I'm a jerk. We could go out, have dinner, talk about being jerks and doing jerk-like things to people. I think it'd be great. See, now that's a great question because I think there's a lot of talented people in this cast list. First person I'll talk about is not in the voice cast. It's Mars Marshall. I was incredibly impressed with his ability to constantly put these different animations out and keep the entire cast and crew updated on what was going on. We got constant emails, we were always in the loop, we knew when anything had changed, when something was updated. All of that stuff was emailed to us as soon as it happened. So I give him a lot of props for being able to stay on schedule, continually keeping everybody in the loop, and then just turning out a great product in the end. So I believe he deserves a lot of credit. I think another shout out needs to go to our composer, George Powell, who has composed a fantastic score for Eve of October, and I'm very impressed that he was able to get it all done, since we were long into production when he signed on, so I give him a lot of props for that. But as far as the actors go, I'll start off one by saying Laura Post. Awesome person, awesome talent, and hopefully I get to see her in a booth in an animated cartoon sometime down the road, but she's absolutely phenomenal. Of course, I mentioned the very talented David Dixon, who, with that James Earl Jones-esque voice, will definitely make some serious moolah later on, so big shout out to David. Natalie Van Sistine, who is a good friend of mine. Of course, my buddy Xander Mobus, Motley Fool. I actually had the pleasure of directing him on some of his auditions, so to see him get cast was something that made me very happy, and is another guy I think you'll be hearing from in the future. Well, I don't have to think really hard about this one. It's when the sniper shoots Jake in the chest. Kaboom! Yeah, that was very, very sweet. So that's what I like most about my character, is he's got great aim. And he's also got great patience. He can just stalk his prey for hours, and as they come across his field of vision, he lines them up, gives a mama a call, says, "I'm about to kill your baby boy." Kaboom! Thanks for playing. If any of my characters had to visit someplace, that's simple. It would be Chicago. Why? Because Chicago's the greatest city in the world. I mean, it's the town that Billy Sunday couldn't shut down. And then on State Street, that great street, I just want to say, they do things that they don't do on Broadway. And I know I had the time of my life, and I even saw a man and he danced with his wife in Chicago, so why wouldn't you want to come here? And that's all I got to say about that. Chicago, faux life. That's a pretty interesting question, because I'm not sure if inspire would be the word that I would use. If I had to think about it, people that I study and that I steal from, well, it has to start out with the old school guys. Mel Blanc, Dawes Butler. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Mel Blanc, Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Foghorn Leghorn, Sylvester, the Looney Tunes were Mel. As for Dawes, you've got Snagglepuss and Huckleberry Hound and Quick Draw McGraw, the list goes on and on. All these different Hanna-Barbera cartoons that he would do. Both of them were absolutely phenomenal. They did a lot of really interesting things, not just with manipulating their voice, but in terms of creating original characters, which I think a lot of people miss. It's not just about how many different ways you can manipulate your voice, but it's about creating characters. And they're two of the best ever. If we get a little bit more modern, my list is going to be gigantic of people that I steal from. But if I just rapid fire a whole bunch of actors at you, Bob Bergen, Jeff Bennett, Crispin Freeman, Steve Bloom, Kari Wahlgren, Tara Strong, Jim Cummings. You see what I mean? Just rapid fire all up in your face. Rob Paulson, Maurice LaMarche, Jess Harnell, Tress McNeil, Billy West, John DiMaggio. You see what I mean? There's just so many people that I steal from, and there's so many talented actors. Can't really limit it. But I will say certain people on that list, and I'll go back to Bob Bergen, have been a huge help to me in my career, because I've studied with Bob, and he's an absolutely phenomenal teacher on top of being a phenomenal actor. And I cannot say enough good things about Bob Bergen. Phenomenal guy. Oh, this question might make people angry. Actually, I hate to say it, not an anime fan at all. It's not really my thing. So I'm gonna pretend this says, you must be a cartoon fan to some degree. Yes, I do like cartoons. How nice of you to notice. Let's talk about cartoons, shall we? I love the Looney Tunes. Grew up on the Looney Tunes. I think anybody that watches cartoons will say that they like the Looney Tunes. So I grew up on the original Scooby-Doo, again, Snagglepuss, Rocky and Bullwinkle, all that old stuff from when Dawes and Mel were around. That's kind of what I grew up on. Then as a transition, I went through that whole 90s period where everything seemed to be good. As far as cartoons from the 90s that I like, well, there was the big trifecta of comic book cartoons of Batman, X-Men, and Spider-Man. So those were great, in my opinion. I enjoyed watching all of them. Another show that I actually rediscovered thanks to a buddy of mine is Dog City. So if you guys are familiar with Jim Henson and the Muppets, that was made by Jim Henson Productions, and it's a very good show. So I highly recommend you guys checking that out if you can find it somewhere. Then, of course, we could talk about Animaniacs and Freakazoid and The Tick, Pinky and the Brain, of course. It was all good. Then there was all those great cartoons over on Disney with Bonkers and Darkwing Duck, which, by the way, when you're in trouble, you do call DW. And I happen to be the New Age DW. And then I look at cartoons now, and it's not the golden age of cartoons like it was in the 90s, but there's still some good stuff. I mean, I'm enjoying the new G.I. Joe Renegade series. I think that's probably my favorite cartoon on TV right now. I definitely enjoy the Transformers when they're done correctly, and I love the Beast Wars series from the 90s. Transformers Animated was great, till they prematurely ended it because of movies, which I'm not bitter about. They're just stupid. Then, of course, I had my Disney movies, and later on I had my Pixar movies, and all that stuff I absolutely adore. So I don't want to rain on the parade of all the peekaboos that love all this anime stuff, but I will say that I'm a cartoon guy through and through, and that's just the way it is. Oh man, my favorite projects of the past. Okay, I'm going to use this opportunity just to plug people. So one of the first things I was ever in was something called Hell, and it was a Flash over on Newgrounds, and it was given to me by my good buddy Devin Mack. So now I get to plug Devin Mack, and Mack is going to hate me for this because he hates when anybody brings attention to him. But since I don't really care, he can go ahead and deal with it. But Mack is a fantastic voiceover talent from the Greater Toronto area up in Canada. And he's a phenomenal director, he's a phenomenal actor, he's a phenomenal casting director. And I don't think he had known me very long, because this was probably April of 2009, right after we had met. And he tosses me this role of the Death God, and turns out I actually knew what the heck I was doing. I turned in a decent performance, and people really liked it. You know, that'll always hold a special place in my heart, so Mac, I appreciate it. Another thing I'll plug is the VG Cats adaptation with no name, which was created by Edwin Tiong. And if you don't know Edwin, who is also known as Omahama I'm just kidding, it's Omadan. But nobody can ever figure out where that H goes. But Edwin is another phenomenal talent, and he did this adaptation of the VG Cats comic. And he's been doing it for a while, and it just recently came to a close, although there's still maybe one or two that might sneak out. We just gotta poke him with sticks, and he'll do some more. But I was fortunate enough to catch on at the tail end of the VG Cats adaptation, and again, Mac is the one that works with Edwin on the casting, and they were nice enough to bring me on board. And I had a lot of fun doing that. There was this one skit called Bro Gamers, which went over very well. And it was an absolute pleasure to work with all those guys, because the cast was absolutely stacked. I recommend that anybody who's interested in the VG Cats or video games in general definitely should check that out. So much love to Edwin Tiong. Love you, buddy. Last thing I'll plug, I promise, is something called VG Exiles, which I believe David Dixon also talked about, but I had the pleasure of being in that as well. It's a sprite series. I won't go too much into it. Go listen to David's interview. He plugs it too. But in that particular sprite animation, I got a chance to play John Talbot from the Darkstalker series, and I got an opportunity to play Gambit from the X-Men series, so that was very, very fun. Speaking of Talbot, there's actually a pattern that I want to point out, because I've noticed I play a lot of canines, so I guess the name DarkWolf is appropriate. I mean, I've played Talbot, I've played a werewolf in a Halloween Flash, I've played dogs before. There's a Flash called Delura that I'm in where I play a wolf. I don't know, something about my voice fits canines, wolves specifically. I actually haven't worked in theater. My background's not in acting. I've never taken an acting class. Recently, I've taken a couple of voiceover classes, but I really have no training in acting, which leads to the obvious question of, well, how the heck do you do this? And I don't know. It's just kind of something that comes natural, and I made it really simple. What is voiceover to me? It's playing pretend. And when I was a little kid, I played pretend all the time, so why can't I do it now? If they want to pay me to play pretend, I'll play pretend, that's fine. I do have other talents, but the one I'll talk about I'll relate back to voiceover. It's creature noises. I have a knack for being able to do critters. And that might be anything from playing a dog and barking, or, you know, playing a lion and growling, or, you know, a rooster, or anything like that. I've really studied a lot of the guys that do that. Frank Welker, who's somebody that I didn't mention before, specifically because I knew this was coming up, is the king of critters. So some of you might know Frank as the voice of Fred on Scooby-Doo, but Frank also does a lot of critter work. He does monkeys. He was Abu in Aladdin. He was Curious George. So he does a lot of that stuff, and he's highly respected for it. D. Bradley Baker is another guy that does a lot of critter stuff. He was Appa and Momo from Avatar: The Last Airbender, the animated series on Nickelodeon. So those are guys that I study and I steal from as much as I can, because it's something that I would like to do, and it's something that I feel that I'm pretty good at. But I'd like to thank you guys for taking the time to check out Eve of October, and then to go the extra mile and listen to the extras and hear all of us blab about nonsensical malarkey and our careers and stuff of that nature. So I will leave you on this note. So just remember, have fun, play fair, and go Bulls.